We'll talk to Keith Law from The Athletic here on the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, get his take on what he thinks the Phillies could be lacking and what they did so far and what would they give up. You know, we've got 3 hours or so left to go until this thing starts to kind of heat up. So let's get some thoughts on that. Keith Law does a great job, as always, covering this kind of stuff for The Athletic. And we got just a couple hours left to go, Keith, before the deadline. It's good to catch up with you again, man. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
All is well. And, the Phillies at the top of the standings. But, Keith, this is Philadelphia, man. You know, people start to panic. They haven't had a series win, 4 straight series. They've had a losing record since the All-Star break. They're about 500 since they left London. When you look at this team right now, does Dave Dombrowski have to do something else?
No, I don't think he has to do anything at all. He made a move. It's fine. I guess there's not really any harm to maybe picking up a little more bullpen help. I do think the upgrade, the sequence of trades there results in an upgrade for them, but he can literally just say, I'm not doing anything at this point, and they'd be fine. They're certainly in good enough position in the standings, and as long as the roster is pretty much healthy at the end of September, they're in great shape to advance in the playoffs.
You know, Keith, one of the problems they've had is their offense. They haven't been able to score runs in these, playoff moments. If they were to do something, is it a bat or an arm that you think this team would help out more?
Just to be clear, I don't know what what conversations have been happening or anything. If there were particularly a better right-handed bat, maybe one who could play corner outfield, that would probably be the best option. I mean, you saw in the playoffs last year, the Diamondbacks had a pretty clear plan for getting through the Philly lineup, and it involved just kind of deep-pantsing their right-handed hitters, right? And we've got mostly the same guys in the lineup here, so that would be the one spot. Look, I understand that Castellanos and his son, they're fan favorites. I completely get that. He was not good in the playoffs, and it's pretty clear how you get him out. He would be the one guy I'd look to replace. I just don't see them doing it. I've not seen any indication from them that they would consider replacing Castellanos. And to me, that's probably the best spot in the lineup where you could get something, assuming that, just thinking of who might even be available. Usually getting a corner bat's a little easier than, say, getting an up-the-middle guy or trying to go get starting rotation help, which is one thing I think the Phillies don't need.
Yeah, I know, people look at what they did. They got Hayes in left field, didn't give up a whole heck of a lot there with Dominguez and Pache, obviously. What did you think of the return and what they gave up for Estevez? Two young pitchers, but there's some people that were wondering, did they give up too much?
No, they didn't give up too much. They did fine in that deal. And I don't think Estevez is a superstar. He's having the best year of his career. He's a rental. They're going to get 20 innings out of him, and that's going to be, obviously, the end of his Phillies tenure. It's a free agency. They also don't need him to be a superstar, right? They just need him to be another late game option to add to the mix. So particularly since they're just not overusing their best relievers. Obviously, Thompson has a tendency, like a lot of managers, to lean on his best guys. And now you can mix things up a little bit so that, say, Hoffman and Alvarado get more, or Strahm, maybe get some more time off because you're throwing another guy in who's good enough to pitch in late game situations and has experience there. They gave up Samuel Aldegheri, who I just saw a couple of weeks ago, lefty who's truly Italian, actually born and raised in Italy. 4-pitch lefty, but the fastball's kind of light. He's maybe a fifth starter. I think he was always destined to be traded, just given his Dombrowski's preference for big velocity. And then George Klassen, I think everybody got very excited because he started the year so well in Clearwater. And they did do a great job with him. He was a 6th-round pick last year, was really not good for the University of Minnesota before they drafted him. They cleaned him up. It's a little better delivery. It's a little better strike. He's still headed for the bullpen. It is a 2-pitch guy who's never going to have the command or control to start. And they sold high, right? He looked great for most of the first half. That's exactly what you want to do if you're the Phillies. If that guy's not going to play for you in the long run, you sort of get him in, get him to look as good as possible, and ship him right out for guys who can help the Major League roster.
Good stuff with Keith Law from The Athletic. Trade deadline less than 4 hours from now. Give us some insight for our listeners, because there's a lot of people out there that, they all hear stuff. I don't want to trade Aiden Miller. I can't trade Justin Crawford or Painter. Where do you put those guys? If somebody made an offer, are those three guys someone you would trade for the right deal, or do you look at them as no way?
I think probably everyone's available in the right deal. I just don't think the right deal exists right now. They don't have that need where you would trade, you need their top three prospects. Andrew Painter's value is just a huge question mark, right? He hasn't pitched in 2 years. He's not going to pitch this year because maybe an instructional league or something. And so no one's seen it. So I don't even know what value he might have at this point. I think Aiden Miller has become their best prospect. And I know that's pretty consistent. Folks who've gone in and seen him, scouts I've talked to, are absolutely raving. People talking about how he should have been a top 10 pick last year. If you could get, Garrett Crochet, Tariq Skubal, I feel better about Skubal. Yeah. If you could get Tariq Skubal, sure, I would consider putting Aiden Miller or Justin Crawford into the deal. They're great, but they are still prospects and 2 to 3 years away from helping the major league club. This is a win-now organization. I just don't think they need Skubal. Of course, it'd be great to have Skubal, but that's not really a critical need for the Phillies. And I would say hang on to your prospect, even if it just means you're hanging on to the offseason to see if you can go trade for someone else who's a better fit for the roster.
Yeah, and Keith, how much does it go into a team thinking about, like Aiden Miller, for instance? I get this is a weird situation because of the age of the Phillies. I mean, you got Trey Turner playing shortstop, but not at a high level. Stott's here, Bohm's here. Miller kind of blocked a little bit. So how much does that factor into, hey, we're willing to do something?
So there's two answers. The last words you said are probably the ideal ones, right? We're willing to do something. We don't have to. It's always important to remember, just because you maybe don't have room for a player, maybe you don't value a player in your own system that highly, that's not what matters. What does the rest of the industry think he's worth? Oh, the rest of the industry thinks Aiden Miller's got a chance to be a star. All right, we have Trey Turner signed until the heat death of the universe. Maybe we're willing to trade Aiden Miller in some situations. And they have other shortstops behind him, too. Starlin Caba, who's in the Complex League, has really broken out this year, and people are saying he might be a superstar. They have shortstop depth, which makes him available but doesn't make him less valuable. That would be the thing. If you're going to trade Aiden Miller, fine. He's got to bring back a superstar of some sort. Definitely not of some sort. Definitely not trading him for a rental, not trading him for a back-end starter or a part-time player in the big leagues. You hold on to Aiden Miller because his value is so high in the industry that you want to go get, like I said, that very high-end return, a superstar, difference-maker type of player. And that is Dombrowski's history. He makes big trades. And I could see them doing that, particularly more with Miller than with Crawford, because Crawford is less blocked. And Crawford also hasn't maxed out his value yet. They still have work to do there, whereas Aiden Miller is just a little further along as a baseball player.
Keith, where in your mind is the value for Mick Abel, who essentially seemingly has just fallen off a cliff? I know he had a decent start the other night, but man, he was right there with Painter. And any value for him, is that a guy that the Phillies are calling and saying, hey, anybody interested? Anybody calling the Phillies trying to get him? What kind of value or return for Mick Abel, a once promising guy?
Yeah, I've been saying this for a couple of years now, and honestly got a lot of grief from Phillies fans. Why don't you have Abel on your top 100? He's better than this. He's better than this. Look, he's got a great arm, but the command was never there. When he was in A-ball, it was already clear, hey, this guy's got to make a pretty significant improvement in command and control, or he's certainly not going to pitch for the Phillies. He's going to have to go to the bullpen at that point. And so I think his value is probably as someone else trying to buy low. I'm sure they're getting hit on him. He has too good of an arm, and I mean just quality of stuff, for nobody to have interest. The question for the Phillies is, do you just say, look, he's not going to pitch for us. We don't have the luxury of taking a guy struggling like this and bringing him to the majors and letting him work through it. So do we trade him now? Because he's just stuck, right? He really is just stuck in AAA. They can't bring him up because he's probably not going to pitch well enough to help the big league club. So do they put him into a trade? I think there is value, but you're going to get hit on by clubs that look at him and say, we can fix him, right? That's the guy, the Dodgers. Dodgers just got Michael Kopech from the White Sox, right?
Yep.
Everybody was joking where, Dodgers are going to fix him and he's going to be, he's going to be a fireman of the year by next season. There are clubs that do that. They have their models. They have their development strategies. They're going to sniff around. Cleveland calls you on Mick Abel. I mean, I'm not saying I wouldn't trade him, but I'd be very, very careful, right? That means they see something, they think they can fix him. Fine. We'll take somebody from your system we think we can fix.
Lewis Robert, would you give up any of those three guys for him?
No, because he's hurt too much.
Yeah.
He's also not having a great year, and that's fine. I think he's better than that. He's a flawed star to me. There are things he does exceptionally well, but there's some stuff in terms of his swing decisions that is always going to limit him a little bit. I could live with all of that, but that guy gets hurt a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm not giving up Miller or Crawford. Set Painter aside because it's just like he almost doesn't exist until he pitches somewhere. But those other two guys, I'm sure Chicago would ask for them. I'd say, we're not going to do that because we can't guarantee we're going to get enough playing time out of Robert to justify it.
All right. We know that the Phillies have a couple hours left. They've made two. Keith said at the top, he thinks they've done enough. They got Austin Hayes. They've added Carlos Estevez. We'll see if Dave Dombrowski has one more move. Make sure you check out Keith Law on the X platform at Keith Law and read all of his coverage of the deadline at The Athletic. Keith, thank you so much, man.
My pleasure.
Always good to catch up with Keith this time of the year. Really has a lot of insight on the minor league stuff. And as you heard, Miller, Crawford, Painter, he doesn't think that they should, move him unless the right deal's out there. Lewis Robert, he wouldn't do that deal. I thought the big stuff, though, Mick Abel. Could they do something with Mick Abel? He said teams will be interested there. What level of deal would you make and include Mick Abel in the deal? That's a big one there.